of triumph and tragedy has come to a close. We mark the passing of time through the seasons, calving, planting, and harvest. 2022 definitely brought challenges along the way, but also opportunities as we reflect on the year that was in Nebraska agriculture. Extreme drought and widespread fires left their mark. Regina Bird will join us to look at the year in weather. Ranchers say they're taking control of their own fate. We revisit the groundbreaking for a new beef plant in the beef state. Plus, revisit some of our favorite stories along with bloopers and outtakes. It's time to grow. A disaster in slow motion. Sirens don't sound for drought until fires break out. 2022 was definitely a year for extreme weather, taking a toll on the Nebraska landscape. Volunteer firefighters protect the community, only to learn the community was protecting them.
When the call goes out, we leave and we kind of rely on neighbors.
Spring fires around Cambridge, Arapahoe, and elsewhere burned tens of thousands of acres with a drought that rivals some of the worst on record. Winds howl across the plains in a scene that seems like something from yesteryear.
If they weren't in color, you would think it was the 30s, the Dust Bowl years.
But that's John Deere green as Lance Atwater gets seed in the ground.
It's definitely making us nervous going into planting season.
A season that coincided with Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We went to Hungary, Romania.
On her travels to Eastern Europe,
That was 2016.
Deb Ganguish saw farms much like hers.
Just not realizing what communism did to those countries.
Now she wonders what those farmers see in this moment.
What was maybe a wheat field or a cornfield is now probably going to be a battlefield.
Global dynamics and supply chain issues resulted in skyrocketing prices for fertilizer.
Both fertilizer and diesel prices either double or, in the case of diesel prices, up almost 118% since January 2021.
More than half of Nebraska is in extreme drought, including part of Merritt County. When calculating what could have been, Jay Rempe says the lost value of corn, soybeans, and wheat is likely $2 billion.
So that's a pretty big hit to take.
And the ongoing drought continues to affect not only farmers, but ranchers who may reduce the herd as conditions worsen.
We might wish we had the 2012 drought back because at least we had snow that winter. Plus, we didn't have the supply chain breakdown, inflation, interest rates that we've got this year. It's going to be challenging. And unfortunately, there will be some. There'll be, we've already seen liquidation, but there'll probably be some consolidation in the operations.
One bright spot for cattle producers, a new packing plant in North Platte as sustainable beef breaks ground.
It was all came up with from don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution. I mean, that's what these beef producers did.
Many call this a generational opportunity, something this community will look back on for decades to come.
We got together and we decided that we were going to do something about it.
Fed up with packing plants controlling their product, Nebraska ranchers decided to do it themselves. And 787 days after they started talking about ways to make the industry sustainable beef breaks ground.
This is a big day for our family, big day for our community, big day for our region, our state, our industry. It's just a monumental day. It is going to be a game changer for our community, not only because of this business, but because of all the other businesses that will come here.
The plant expects to hire more than 800 workers, and North Platte anticipates people moving to town, buying homes, and others starting spin-off businesses. The numbers economists have calculated are staggering.
It's $1.1 billion every year. So there is not one person in this room that can't benefit from this project.
And while it's rancher-led, the CEO says that investment alone wasn't enough.
We are incredibly proud to call North Platte home at Walmart.
The world's largest retailer now joins forces with Nebraska's biggest industry with a minority stake.
When you had Walmart step in, that was huge to make this viable.
You're doing business with Walmart already. They're the largest buyer of American beef, so it's hard. How do you knock your customer, right? Like, they're already writing us a check. They just want to invest more into it. And they're one of the largest employers in North Platte with the distribution center, with the large store. I mean, this is just another investment in small town America.
Walmart says its sustainability goals align with this project.
We're going to build capacity in the beef industry in a way that complements Walmart's regeneration goals and practices.
But sustainability to Trey Wasserberger means opening new opportunities for the next generation of ranchers, including his own 4 kids.
Producer owned means a lot because it's something that's never been done, and it's unprecedented, and that's why it's so difficult and it took us a long time to get here. But we're proud of that, and we're going to own that label forever.
Later, we highlight some of the great farm families we met in the last 12 months. Up next, we chat one-on-one with Governor Pete Ricketts.
This portion of NTV's Grow is sponsored by Acres Equipment, solutions for every field. Acres has what you need to get the job done.
Philosophy, before I got elected governor, one of the things I did is put together my ag advisor group, and it had ag professionals from across different segments of the ag industry. And one of the things they consistently talk about was value-added agriculture, and the biggest opportunity there is livestock, right? Taking the grains we raise, feeding it to animals, whether it's beef or pork or chicken, and then selling that value-added product. And so we've worked on being able to expand that in many different aspects to be able to do that. You mentioned some of them with regard to sustainable beef or Costco in regard to processing. Ethanol is another great example of value-added agriculture. So we really want to be able to promote these, and that's part of why I do the trade missions overseas, because 95% of the world's consumers lie outside our borders. We have to go out and sell them. And our beef exports, for example, to Japan are up 88% since 2015, $215 million. That's a real impact there. And of course, 56% of all of our pork exports go to Japan as well. And now we're finding that they've got a demand for sustainable aviation fuel. Yeah. We're looking to make that from ethanol. So lots of opportunities for us to find more areas to do this, and making sure that we've got a state that is friendly to agriculture is critical for us. It is our #1 industry. It's the heart and soul of what we do here. If we're going to grow Nebraska, we have to grow agriculture.
You mentioned that trade component. I hear some producers say, we produce what is considered a commodity, but if we can position Nebraska specifically, if that's something that's come up on some of these missions to say, you can do business with anybody, but Nebraska, if you want Nebraska beef, is that something that comes up to try to differentiate us in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my last trade mission to Japan, we were working with Nippon Steel, who has a trading business that imports food products, and they've got a product called Captain Beef from Nebraska. So they are specifically branding their beef from Nebraska as the highest quality. And while we were there, we heard from a pork producer, Holstrom Farmers, like, hey, can we do the same thing for Nebraska pork? And the answer is, of course, absolutely. So let's work for ways to brand Nebraska pork there as high quality and a differentiator in the marketplace. So we absolutely want to do that, and that's part of what the Department of Agriculture has done with their Straight from the Good Life campaign, to be able to help ag producers to be able to brand from Nebraska as an advantage when they're selling their products.
I think our producers, I'm going to steal a word from you that I've heard use, grit. What do you think that speaks to about our Nebraska producers?
Well, our Nebraska producers, again, are the best in the world. And look, if you're going to be in agriculture, you know that you are going to have hard times, because Mother Nature's not always going to be nice.
Yeah, I mean, did you see that on display during the wildfires or flooding where neighbors helped neighbors? It's something we say. You saw that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, during the wildfires, for example, we had so many rural fire departments volunteer to be able to help fight those fires, and also just local farmers saying, hey, let me bring my tractor out and I'll go plow a field for you to create a fire break. I mean, everybody was on board to be able to help make sure they did what they needed to do for the community to be able to get through those challenges.
The weather was clearly the story of the year, and our own Regina Bird sat down with the National Weather Service to look back.
Well, as we wrap up 2022, we want to go in the weather review the whole year. We had a lot that happened this year. So Mike Moritz with the National Weather Service, a meteorologist there, joining us once again this year to talk about everything that happened this year. There's a lot to cover this year. It was a pretty active year.
It was an active year, you know, and even though we've had a little taste of winter recently, last winter was interesting because we didn't really have much snow.
Right.
There were parts of the state, northeast Nebraska, that would normally get 40 inches of snow. They didn't have 5 inches of snow. And that was really, I think, a harbinger of kind of how the year played out with the lack of moisture, beginning with the lack of snow last winter.
Absolutely. And so then moving on to that lack of moisture and how that impacted maybe wildfires. So I've never seen a wildfire season like that.
This year we've burned over 200,000 acres year long in the state. But the spring was incredibly active here in the central part of the state, especially with large wildfires in Red Willow, Furnace, Gosper counties that unfortunately resulted in some loss of life. We also had other wildfires around the region, and that was all driven by that dry weather. And if we all remember, you know, it's always windy here, but April was pretty ridiculous. In fact, for Grand Island, we averaged almost 17 miles an hour every day, all the time, throughout the month of April. So it was really a rough, windy month.
It felt pretty nonstop for that wind. So,
yeah.
of course, those things combined, of course, didn't help that wildfire season and didn't help the firefighters that were fighting that either. So.
Absolutely. Some exceptional wind events, too. Some of those fires involved 50, 60-mile-per-hour wind events with rapidly moving fires, extremely difficult to control.
Well, that's a look so far at 2022. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about weather in 2022. So stay with us.
Thanks, Regina. She'll be back in next with a look at the other storms and the outlook for 2023.
NTV's Grow Weather is sponsored by Acres Equipment, solutions for every field. Acres has what you need to get the job done.
And so let's start with the June hailstorms that we had across the region.
Yeah, the big story in the middle of the year was, even though we would expect severe weather, June's hailstorms were really widespread, very damaging across the area. A couple of them stand out, roughly from about June 7th through June 14th. One of them rolled down the Loup Valley from Custer County all the way through parts of northern Buffalo County into Hall County, even toward the Hastings area. Just widespread damage, snapped trees, windows blown out of homes, and crops pounded into the ground in that area. A very devastating event. The second one was even larger in scope. That stretched along Interstate 80 from the Minden, north of Holdridge area, and ended up all the way into eastern Nebraska through York, Seward County. The devastation in York County was probably some of the worst I have seen from a hailstorm. They had not one, not two, 3 or more in one night. Not just crops blown away, but pounded into the ground. We even topped it off with the tornado in the Lushton area that did quite a bit of damage that night. Hailstorms devastated tens of thousands of acres, if not more, across the region.
Yeah, definitely a heartbreaking sight to see.
Very
that's
much
for
so,
sure.
very much so.
So we got those storms. They brought some moisture, but brought a lot of hail with them. But of course, another big story of 2022 is certainly the drought.
Yeah, probably the biggest story of the year is the way this drought has unfolded across the state. There have been areas of the state throughout the year, through most of the year, the driest on record in parts of northeast Nebraska and southwest Nebraska. And anytime you are rivaling the 30s for drought conditions or temperature conditions, you know you're in some rarefied air. So Nebraska is essentially the driest state in the union right now in terms of topsoil moisture. It hasn't happened overnight. It's been a 2 to 3 year process, but it's something that I think we're all deeply concerned about now. And with the winter actually starting off somewhat dry, the exception being the heavy snow in northwest Nebraska, the rest of the state still remains dry, and it's a deep concern going through the winter.
Absolutely. And the long-term forecast, we have La Nina going right now. What are you thinking winter-wise?
Yeah, La Nina is generally not a great rain producer for the region. There's some times when it is, but in general, it kind of takes out the wet, and we favor the dry. And that's really what we've seen. We're in the 3rd year of La Nina here. So there is some good news in terms of La Nina. It's expected to peak and then weaken into the spring, and then we go to more of what we call a neutral condition. And that basically means we would expect, hopefully, a little bit more precipitation, a little bit more normal type of weather pattern, and a little less of the extremes. However, it's going to take a while to rebound from this drought. In 2012, we saw very low river flows well through 2013. So we're going to need several months of above normal, that perfect weather if we can get it, right?
Right, absolutely.
And not too much at once, but more than what we maybe need for a while. And then hopefully we can be improved as we get into the summer and the fall. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I feel like every time a drought happens in Nebraska, everyone compares it to 2012 because that's the one, maybe in the most recent memory, that's maybe a little bit comparable. But you're saying that this one's always also worse than that one.
It's in that neck of the woods, and it's just going to take a little bit, a year or more, to really get out of it. Hopefully we'll be in a better position if we talk again next year.
Whether you're attending a progress show or maybe dealing with blizzards, we want to see photos from the farm and ranch. Go to our website, Nebraska.tv, and chime in. When we return, we highlight some of the folks we met this year, and later, bloopers and outtakes. It's a selfie-worthy field, not corn, beans, or wheat, simply sunflowers.
Well, and you can see here, these have been pollinated.
With these fields of gold, it always feels sunny on the Kelling family farm.
There's about 1.5 million sunflower plants behind me.
And there's 22,000 to 24,000 sunflowers per acre.
This one is about...
Farmer Al, as he's known, had a neighbor who grew sunflowers, and he needed an excuse to try it. His first attempt was focused on turning it into biodiesel.
The idea was grow your own fuel.
But they pivoted to producing their own cooking oil. The American Heart Association calls sunflower oil heart healthy, and theirs is now available in hundreds of locations.
Right there on the store shelf, right along with Heinz ketchup.
They call the oil simply sunflower, and while the plants are powered by the S-U-N sun, they say their business is powered by the S-O-N, the Son of God.
Be an honor to God, and we try to run the business that way.
The business is Alan and his wife Jeanette and their daughters, including Sierra, who handles marketing.
It's very refreshing just to get away from the busyness and breathe in the sunshine.
Al says they've been raising sunflowers since 2006 and like it as a rotational crop that works well after winter wheat harvest and builds the soil.
As a farmer, we just need to take care of what takes care of us.
Farmer Al likes his farm sunny side up.
I didn't need this at my age, but it's interesting, it's exciting, and it's a healthy product.
As we wrap things up, I have to admit, I'm no farmer, even though I may play one on TV, so to speak, but really, truly, I enjoy hanging out with farmers and ranchers and telling your story on the news, and sometimes you let me do some pretty cool things, like getting behind the wheel of a combine, as we close out the year on a lighter note.
That's full throttle. Okay. Okay, and then engage the head, you push down and then forward. Down and then forward. Yep. Push through. Because it made that happy chirping noise. Push 3 again. So this machine syncs up and down. Yep. I mean, if you speed up, she'll speed up. That's the view going into the cart.
Grow on to a close. 3, 2, 1. And that's going to bring this up. 3, 2, 1. And that's going to bring this episode of Grow On 3, 2, 1.
See how we're going a little further in the cart? You can do it again too. There's buttons on the sides. You push the back one. Okay.
Reporting near Fairfield, I'm Steve White.
I don't think anybody can remember anything like this, Steve.
So, okay.
Call that good then.
Yeah, you better make it good.
Hey, appreciate it. Good to see you, Steve. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And for the first time in decades, something just got me there.
Well, when my kids get home from school, I'll have a story for them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Daddy, what'd you do today? I drove the combine.
You did? Yeah.
And whatever happens in 2023, we'll be here to see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow. Good night.